right, time to dive into something I think we all struggle with sometimes. You know, how to conquer those interview nerves and make sure you can turn that dream job into a reality.
Definitely a relatable topic. Everyone gets nervous for interviews.
Yeah, totally. And that's why we're doing a deep dive today into a video by CareerVids. It's called 5 Powerful Tips to Beat Interview Nerves and Anxiety. Have you seen this one?
I have. Really practical advice in that one. It's great that they've helped so many people with their interviews.
For sure. They definitely know what they're talking about. So let's jump into their first tip, reframing nerves as excitement. I thought this was super interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool concept. Instead of dreading those nerves, thinking of them as excitement.
Totally. They even shared this story about being a drummer, like way back when,
Yeah.
and how they would get stage fright before gigs.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's actually really common, even if you wouldn't think so. Lots of performers deal with that. Our brains process excitement and anxiety in a really similar way, right?
So it's all about how we're thinking about it,
Yep.
basically.
It is. Like your heart rate increases, maybe you start breathing a little faster. Those sensations are pretty much the same whether you call it excitement or anxiety.
That's kind of wild when you think about it. So how do we actually flip that script?
So it takes a little effort, you know? But you have to start by imagining yourself not just surviving the interview, but enjoying it.
Okay, so visualize it going really well.
Exactly. Picture yourself being confident, talking about your experience and what you can bring to the table. Visualize it.
So like, just like athletes use that pregame energy to their advantage.
Yes. And, don't underestimate stuff like power posing or even just like deep breaths before you go in. Even affirmations can help too.
Affirmations, like telling yourself, you've got this.
Yeah, seriously. It sounds kind of weird, but say some positive stuff to yourself. I am prepared. I am excited to share my skills, that kind of thing. It can actually make a difference.
It's like you're retraining your brain, you know?
Totally. Shifting from what if it goes wrong to what if it goes right. That's what it's all about.
I love that. And speaking of challenging those fears, their second tip was interesting. It's about facing that fear of rejection, by asking yourself, what's the worst that could happen?
Ooh, I like that one. It's such a simple question, but it makes you really think.
Right. When you actually say it out loud, those fears can seem a lot smaller.
Definitely. And that's where the whole idea of a growth mindset comes into play.
Okay, growth mindset. I hear that term a lot. What exactly does that mean? Okay, a growth mindset. I hear that term a lot. What exactly does that mean?
So it's like instead of thinking of challenges as failures, you see them as chances to learn and grow, right? Like if you don't get the job, it's not the end of the world.
It's more about figuring out what you can learn from it. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it wasn't the right fit. Maybe there's some skills you can work on for next time. It's all good.
That's a really good point. I like that.
It's like CareerVid says, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
That's so true. I feel like a lot of people forget that. It's a two-way street.
Totally. You're trying to see if the company is a good fit for you too, not just the other way around.
Right. So what are some questions people can ask to really figure that out? About the company culture and all that.
Go beyond the basics. Like, don't just ask about benefits. Ask about their values, what's important to them.
Oh, I like that. It's getting to the heart of what they're all about.
Exactly. You could ask about professional development or even just like, what's a normal day like in this role?
Those are great questions. It shows you're really paying attention and thinking long term.
Right. It's like you're both trying to solve a puzzle together.
Right.
Find the perfect fit.
Love that analogy. Speaking of making a good impression, CareerVids' fourth tip is about nailing that first impression. Putting your best foot forward right from the start.
That first impression is huge. And it starts with that classic, tell me about yourself. You know how they always ask that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like the essential interview question.
You got to nail that one. It's your chance to really grab their attention.
So it's like your elevator pitch, but maybe even more concise.
Exactly. Hit those key points, the skills and experiences that are most relevant to the job.
Don't give them your whole life story then. Haha.
Right. Just the highlights. And practice it, Practice makes perfect.
I was just going to say that it's like anything, the more you practice, the more confident you'll feel. Practice makes perfect, right? It's like anything, the more you practice, the more confident you'll feel. But even with all the practice in the world, you might still get hit with a question that throws you off. I know I have.
It happens, and that's when those nerves can really start to take over.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're put on the spot like that?
Well, CareerVids had a really good tip for that. It's actually really simple. Don't be afraid to just ask them to come back to that question later in the interview.
Oh, I like that. It's so much better than trying to make something up on the spot.
Exactly. It shows you're calm under pressure.
Right. It shows you can think on your feet.
And that you want to give them a thoughtful answer, even if it takes a minute.
It's like taking control of the situation instead of letting it control you. Okay, that's a really good one. Now, what if you're totally stumped? Like you need more than just a minute to think.
They had another strategy for that too. They said you could offer to do some research after the interview and get back to them.
Oh, that's a good idea. It shows you're willing to go the extra mile.
Right. It shows you're really invested.
Definitely. This whole deep dive has been so helpful. I feel like I've learned so much about how to handle interview nerves.
Me too. It's good stuff.
So what's like one big takeaway we can leave our listeners with? Something to help them really conquer those nerves.
Okay, how about this? Figure out what your biggest interview fear is, the one that keeps you up at night.
Okay, name that fear. Got it.
And then use everything we talked about today to come up with a plan to deal with it.
Love it. Turn that fear into action.
Exactly. Because even if the interview doesn't go perfectly, it's still a learning experience.
So true. Well said. All right, everyone. Thanks for diving in with us. Go out there and ace those interviews.